Hello, good evening, and welcome. The foot and mouth disease is wreaking havoc in rural areas, and farmers believe that the government, which should be controlling the disease, is actually part of the problem. Murray Foster gave us this report from the front line. He manages a large dairy farm.
Foot and mouth, yeah. So it's a major issue, and it's crippling people, and the ripple effect through other industry service providers it's horrific. The general costs per dairy farm, obviously in the dairy industry it hits a lot harder because those cows are lactating, so obviously the infections gets into the udder, teeth start falling off and all sorts of issues. The clove on the hoof come off depending on the severity of the infection. So obviously staff costs go through the roof, because even though these girls are sore and tender and scabbed, you still got to try and milk them twice a day to get the infection out. So animals are fighting you, they're bellowing. So it's hugely stressful and traumatic for staff, for animals. You got to obviously double up on staff members to try and handle it. Medical costs go through the roof, and obviously production absolutely plummet. Look, it's massive. The spread of this is just horrendous, and with our government constantly pushing the goalposts. They keep saying the end of January we're meant to be vaccinated. Now it's the end of March. So by the time we get the vaccine, the horse is bolted and it's absolutely wiped us out. Like I say, the spread is horrific. Dave Mobley, in the morning of when he first found the first case, he saw 2 animals. By afternoon it was 50, 60. By the next day it was 200. It just spreads like wildfire. As things play out, it kind of looks it's a political play on the ANC's behalf. They've absolutely prevented us to try and source any form of vaccines. Vaccines that have been available, it's all been to subsistence farmers and non-commercials, and purely just delay tactics. They've put in a lot of effort to try and prevent any private entity trying to get involved. Up to now, still haven't declared a state of emergency, which kind of shows you where we are. There was a private entity in Cape Town that put together a vaccine, very effective, working off basically COVID and how they manufactured that COVID vaccine. And they reckon it was going to be a breakthrough, it was going to be phenomenal, it was going to be highly effective. Had to go through final stages of testing, which needed to go through Ondersteport, and was shut down. Everyone's getting angry with Steenhuisen, but I do wonder whether that is the objective of the ANC, because foot and mouth has been in South Africa for 4 years. Steenhuisen's only been there for 18 months. So maybe there is a little bit of laziness or naivety, but at the same time, I'm sure his hands are tied. And in the same token, is he not set up to fail or to take the blame off them? But yeah, we're fighting a disease, we're fighting politics, we're fighting goodness knows what the ultimate objective out of this. There was one of the questions that was thrown at them where they've taken sole responsibility or control. And so by commercial law, that means you're accountable for the losses. So they've issued a statement that if we don't have proper structured biosecurity measures in place, then there will definitely be no claims, but the state haven't stated what are those measures. Everyone's just running off what they can and what they think. No protocols are put in place. Not a single state vehicle is assisting in any form of control or the prevention of movement of animals. In other words, the state's not involved at all. So that's just where it is. So everything that is in place is all privately done, funded by farmers, feedlots, etc., etc. Yeah, so we're fighting this on our own with our hands tied behind our backs.
After some years of trying, Elon Musk finally made it to Davos this year, and he was full value for his appearance. Let's us not allow the moment to pass. Here's Elon talking about why solar power is actually all that really matters.
Yeah, I think the limiting factor for AI deployment is fundamentally electrical power.
It's right. It's energy.
Yeah. I mean, we're seeing the rate of AI chip production increase exponentially, but the rate of electricity being brought online is
3%, 4% a year, max.
Yeah. It's clear that we're very soon, maybe even later this year, we'll be producing more chips than we can turn on. Except for China. China's growth in electricity is tremendous.
They're building 100 gigawatts of nuclear as we speak.
Actually, solar is the biggest thing in China. So I believe China's production capacity on solar is 1,500 gigawatts a year, and they're deploying over 1,000 gigawatts a year of solar. Now, for continuous solar load, you divide that by roughly, 4 or 5. Call it that's around 250 gigawatts of steady state power paired with batteries. And that's a very big number. That's half of the average power usage in the U.S.
Right.
So U.S. power usage on average is 500 gigawatts. Right. China, just in solar, in solar like that can provide steady state power and batteries, can do half of the U.S. electricity output per year just with solar. Solar is by far the biggest source of energy. And actually, when you look beyond, or even on Earth, but certainly beyond Earth, the sun rounds up to 100% of all energy. This is an important thing to consider. So the sun is 99.8% of the mass of the solar system. Jupiter is about 0.1%, and everything else is miscellaneous. Now, even if you were to burn Jupiter in a thermonuclear reactor, the amount of energy produced by the sun would still round up to 100%, because Jupiter is only 0.1%. If you teleported 3 more Jupiters into our solar system, and burnt 3 more Jupiters, and everything else in the solar system, the sun's energy would still round up to 100%. Mm-hmm. So it's really all about the sun. And that's why one of the things we'll be doing with SpaceX within a few years is launching solar-powered AI satellites.
Right.
Because the space is really the source of immense power, and then you don't need to take up any room on Earth. There's so much room in space, and you can scale to enormous. You can scale to, I think, ultimately hundreds of terawatts a year.
There's a riveting interview on BizNews with Zimbabwean tour operator Rusty Labuschagne. He tells my colleague Linda van Tilburg how he was arrested and spent 10 years in jail, falsely accused, falsely arrested, falsely charged, and falsely convicted. Here's the man with a story that, well, if you want to get the full part of it, go on to biznews.com, where it waits.
In 2000, there was the land invasion chaos that started. And unfortunately, it made the population feel entitled to anything. So there was conflict with my fishing resort on Lake Kariba and a fishing cooperative that was nearby. They were netting all the time in an area they weren't allowed to, which was where my fishing resort was. And whenever you're an operator, safari operator, whether you're fishing or guiding or hunting, you're responsible for anti-poaching. So I was always cutting their nets and apprehending them. So there was conflict. And I was with a bunch of friends on a fishing trip, and I saw 2 poachers that I knew, notorious guys. I drove my boat towards them late one evening with a friend of mine, And it was about 5:30 in the evening, and if I had arrested them, it was 2 hours to the authorities there and 2 hours back. So I just wanted to scare them off. And I went towards them in my boat, turned the boat, and the wake of the boat caused their boat to tilt, and they jumped out into the water, which was about 1.5 meters deep, and they were about 3 meters from the shore. They soon scrambled to dry land and ran off into the bush, thinking nothing more of it. My friend and I thought nothing more of it. And the following day, the police arrived with one of them and accused us of drowning the other one. And to cut a long story short, I was framed by the poacher, the police, and the courts in an ugly, politically influenced conspiracy, because it got very political up to presidential level. There was a judge trying to help me. He got thrown in prison, not impeached. So it was quite a free-for-all during that time in Zimbabwe with the land invasions. Anyway, so on the 3rd of April 2003, I was convicted of drowning that poacher. No one drowned, no evidence, and without a body, against police evidence. A lot of the police evidence was in my favor. But it was very political. And like I said, it got to presidential level where there was a war between the judge and the president, and unless I was guilty, they couldn't prosecute the judge. And that's what happened. And, before I went in, before the judgment, I was phoned by a very powerful political figure. And he said, "Russ, you're going to prison. Get out." And just a message for the viewers, Linda, is your reputation. You work your whole life for your reputation, and you can lose it in a second. And I could have run, but I would have left my family, my friends, everything I'd worked my whole life for, and the whole infrastructure that I'd built in all those years. And I would have been running guilty and never come back again. And I still have my reputation today.
Cody from Paul has sold multiple vehicles to We Buy Cars. Suspicious? I think so.
Is that a crime?
No. Where are you getting the cars?
I buy them and I sell them at the spot like a normal person.
Okay.
No, man, I'm just an accounting student. I know a good deal when I see one.
That's Excel meant. What's more stressful, tax season or selling a car at We Buy Cars?
Tax season, obviously.
We Buy Cars, the easiest way to sell your car by far.
An unusual insight for us today in the wealth building tip. In this one, Piet Viljoen, the founder of ReCM, tells us how we should be making sense of the most powerful man in the world, the mercurial Donald Trump, who seems to, today want to buy Greenland, tomorrow invade Iran.
It's very hard to think of a rational reason for this. It could just be that he wants to become known as the president that acquired the 51st state. Just have that on his CV, so to speak. It could be as simple as that. Or it could be, that there are possibly, and I don't know this, but there are possibly rare earth or lots of rare earth minerals in Greenland that the US can exploit to rebuild its supply chain into the defense industry and that sort of thing. That it could be strategic for that sort of reason. It could be strategic just from a geographical point of view, as you point out. There's any number of reasons why you would do that, but I don't think that we wouldn't know. It's as you say, he creates massive uncertainty and exploits that uncertainty. And again, I think it makes investors uncertain as well.
So he's put a stake in the ground far in excess of what he really wants, again, and we just need to read him that way. Do we give people like Trump and politicians generally too much headspace? Our headspace?
I think so. I think politicians tend to reflect what the popular vote wants them to do. The popular vote isn't always right. Popular music is always the best music, and so on and so forth. But they just reflect popular opinion. And I think when you're looking at investments, in the short term, yes, politicians can have an influence on investment outcomes. But in the longer term, I think they have less of an influence than we would give them credence for in the general discourse. I think there are much more important things at play in determining investment outcomes than what somebody like Donald Trump does or Joe Biden.
Thanks for joining us. We'll be back again tomorrow. Cheerio.